You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Eternal Tournament Series, third weekly for our Season 5 tournament. We are going to do a little bit of a pre-show here today. I am aReNGee Bairdrus, and with me today, my wonderful co-host is going to be Sir Rhino. And for the first time ever on the Eternal Tournament Series, we're going to go ahead and do a pre-show for a lead-in, since we, as far as I'm aware, Rhino, had a giant set release over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we have about 250 new cards to play with. Omens of the Past is here. It's been here for a bit, but this is the first weekly that it is legal to play all of the cards in the set in Omens of the Past in. So lots of new stuff to expect this week and in the weeks to come. This is not going to be the be-all, end-all tournament for Omens of the Past. It is here for life. So I'm excited. The first set, the Empty Throne, it lasted us a long time. It did a lot of great things, but now it's got some new friends to play with, and I'm really excited to see what today's tournament brings.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll hopefully see a lot of cool decks coming out today, and of course we will. We'll definitely have a lot of people playing a lot of new archetypes, some people returning to some familiar archetypes, and some people going back to archetypes that had been played around with in the past in some of these 3 faction decks that didn't have a full host of support yet. That now, with the enemy faction pairings that we now have, they're complemented a lot better, and some of their strategies are a lot more synergistic. And we'll get into those as we go out throughout the day, because we have so many different builds of decks today.
Yeah. There's going to be aggro. There's going to be control. There's going to be, I think there's a little combo out there and plenty of mid range. This is the first week of a new metagame, so generally that means people will play more safer strategies like aggro and mid range. Those lists are just a little bit easier to figure out how to build at first, whereas this set is chock full of oddball build around relics and stuff like that, and those might take a little more time to bubble to the surface, but we still have a lot of spicy lists out there today, just looking over the list, and that might be because we have over 100 lists to look at today. We just smashed the ETS attendance record this week. I believe we had, I don't know what the final cut's going to be once check-ins is done, but we had over 100 people sign up for this tournament.
Yeah, it's an absolutely massive tournament. We want to thank everybody out there who went ahead and signed up, who came out today, who wanted to show off their new deck. So thank you all to the players for coming out today, and providing us a huge lineup of participants. This is going to be great. We just got word from Rick Henner that we actually do have 90 check-ins, over 90. So most of those 107 people, it looks like, are going to be coming to play. So that's fantastic. We're going to be really happy to see all of them come out. In the meantime, what I think we're going to do, Rhino, unless I'm wrong, is that we're going to take a look at some of the Set 2 cards that you and me think are going to be some of the biggest role players in not just the ladder, but of course the tournament scene.
Yeah, now we're not going to be able to go over even close to all of them in these few minutes we have before the round start, but we picked out, just some of the flashy ones. Omens of the Past main objective here was to help support the unsupported faction pairs, right? In the first set, the Empty Throne, we had Cambrai and Rakano, Feln, all those those first 5 faction pairs. And what Omens of the Past set out to do is give us the other 5 faction pairs more support. So you have Praxis, Huru, Argenport, Skycrag, and Xenon as the new ones. So we're going to go over some of their standouts, the flashy legendaries that probably most of our viewers are familiar with, but just in case you haven't seen them yet, we're going to talk about their implications and just how sweet they are.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to take a look at what we think they can do. So the first card up on our list to talk about is a somewhat controversial card, but definitely an impactful one, Champion of Impulse. So for those of you looking at the screen right now, Champion of Impulse is a 3-cost Praxis card, which means it is fire and time influence requirement. It's a 2/2 mage that has an effect that says when the Champion of Impulse attacks, you gain +1 power this turn as long as you have 3 fire influence. and it gets a +2/+2 for controlling 3-time influence. So this is a card, I think, anyway, that you're pretty high on, Rhino.
Yeah. In time-based decks, you're just, especially like if you're Praxis midrange, and there's going to be a lot of Praxis midrange, mostly because of the next card we're going to talk about, you're also going to play this card. It's going to be a 4/4 for 3 a lot of the time. And while you might not always get great usage out of the triple fire side of it, I found it to be useful so far in my gameplay with it. Just that little bit of extra power that you can plan around having actually does make a difference more than you'd expect. It doesn't always make a difference. Obviously, if you're in top deck mode or something, you don't need the power. But Praxis can be a rather power-hungry deck, and you'll find ways to use that power. I've already had games where I attacked where my power was already used up and my opponents blocked, forgetting that I got that extra power, and I blew them out with Torch and stuff like that because you just don't think to play around it. It doesn't really give you any indication that you gained the extra power, which is a little weird. So that part of it takes some getting used to and just learning how to play with Champion Impulse. But it's a strong card. You've got to hit the influence requirements, but a 4/4 for 3 is already good. And that little bit of upside is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely looks like a card that has a lot of upside for not a ton of investment, and it's going in very nicely with what I imagine the Praxis strategy is, since they're going to be more of a mid-rangey ramp deck. And in fact, their payoff card is the one we're going to go ahead and talk about next. So next card that Praxis got, which is the huge boon to their strategy, is Heart of the Vault. Now, this is a very, very spicy card. This card has a lot of text. It does a lot of things.
Yeah, Heart of the Vault, I think, is the real reason we're going to see Praxis mid-range. Champion of Impulse might be a nice role player, but Heart of the Vault's a doozy. So let's go over everything that's going on with this card. It is a 6 cost, all right, 6 power, triple fire, triple time influence, 6/6. All right, 6/6 for 6 with that kind of requirements. Steep, but it has warp. So if you're in top deck mode or whatever, you can play it off the top of your deck as long as you can cast it. And it has this huge summon ability. 1, it deals 2 damage to an enemy. So you can either ping their face for 2 or take out a random small thing that's on the board. And you get to draw a card and reduce the cost of that card that you drew by 2. So sometimes you get a free Torch or a free Temple Scribe that immediately get to play. It's just a lot of value. There's the floor of this card is you can't cast it because it's triple fire, triple time. But the ceiling is essentially a 4-for-1 where you play it off the top of your deck, so you're up a card already. You kill something using the 2 damage, you draw a card, and you get a 6/6 all out of 1 card. So this is the reason to be Praxis midrange. It is big, it is flashy, it is a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very powerful card, and quite a few players have used this as their top end. And in fact, a ton of our players today who are playing that Praxis midrange list are going to be topping out with Heart of the Vault, and it's very, very easy to see why. I mean, as you said, this card just does a lot of things. Drawing a card and reducing its cost by 2 on top of the fact that Heart of the Vault can already be warped in is just such a massive amount of card advantage. And that's on top of, as you said, a 6/6 for 6, which is still a very, very solid body. So I think this card is going to put in a lot of work, and I definitely think it is absolutely the reason for Praxis players to be running Praxis midrange today. And we're going to see quite a few of these get cast, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's no surprise that we're gonna the number of lists with Heart of the Vault in them today. There's all sorts of different lists you can put it into. It's not all going to be just big Praxis mid-range good stuff, but that's a pretty safe place to start, especially in essentially week 1 of this new meta. So let's move on to I guess the next faction pair that we can talk about, which let's do Huru. Huru's got a goodie for us.
Yeah, Huru has a couple nice cards that came out of this new set, but by far the biggest role player that everybody's latched onto is going to be Kothon the Far Watcher. Now, Kothon, again, is just full of text. That's one of the common themes of this set is we just have cards that have text all over them, and it's great because they have so many different cool effects. But let's go ahead and give you a stat rundown. So Kothon, first off, is a 2/3 for 2, which is already a pretty good stat line. He requires Huru Influence, so that's Primal and Justice. He has Endurance naturally, and he has an ultimate effect that says when you pay 6, you give Kothon flying, and you play a 4/4 flying owl. So this is kind of like a mini Great Parliament for 6 that also happens to give Kothon himself flying.
Yep, this card isn't the flashiest in terms of doing something really crazy or out there that you've never seen before. It's just really good and really efficient. A 2/3 endurance for 2 is something you're already going to be relatively happy to play in almost any deck that's in Huru. And then, yeah, that ultimate ability that now Kothon itself becomes flying, and you get that extra flyer on top of it. So Kothon is just brutal efficiency in terms of the stats you're getting for the price in the package. And that's just a card that's going to see a lot of play. You don't have to jump through hoops to make Kothon good. Kothon is just a good card on its own. And yeah, there's been rumblings that we'll see this in Chalice decks. Chalice decks are interested in this card as an additional wind con that can also still be hit by Chalice. But you're also just going to see this in various maybe Huru control lists, also just Huru mid-range, or Huru, even Huru flyer lists might find room for Kothon. So if you're in Huru, you're going to need a very good reason to not play Kothon in a list. But I'd expect him, if Huru sees play, Kothon will see play. It's really not one or the other here.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm completely in agreement with you there. And I think something that I was saying yesterday, I was chatting with Calimdir just about some of these cards. And the way I look at Kothon is I look at him, he's not your all-star, he's your role player. And he really is just going to make the cut in most Huru-based decks just because of how solid he is as a card. You know, he's not, as you said, the flashiest. He's not the most powerful, the most impactful. But what he does is he gets a very nice job done. And he doesn't cost a lot to play. He's not Heart of the Vault over here where you're committed, you know, six influence requirements to play a single card. You're barely in the card at all, and it has a very, very solid effect for that. So Kothon, solid card, definitely like him quite a lot.
Yeah, you can only say so many bad things about a 2-drop that's good in the late game. That's just a nice place to be in.
Exactly.
So next we're going to move to Argenport, which has a lot of odd things going on in this set. Revenge being its I suppose flagship mechanic, and it got a flagship card to go with that. In Inquisitor Mokto, when this card got dropped, a lot of people kind of lost their minds about him just because he's so cool. You know, we were all like, this card's good, but how good is he going to be? And I think we're going to find that out today. Mokto's making his appearance in quite a number of lists as a 5/5 flyer Revenge for 5, double justice, double shadow influence requirements. I mean, you need to be at least somewhat committed to Argenport to cast him. But he has an extra spicy line of text in Mokto's Revenge never ends. So how about we go into exactly what that means, Bairdrus?
Yeah, so Mokto is one of those like flashy cards that we were talking about. He's a 5/5 for 5, which is already very solid, and then he has this flying mechanic which allows him good evasion, and then Revenge. Now, Revenge is the new keyword for Argenport. That's their big flagship keyword. And what Revenge does is when a unit dies with Revenge, it goes into the top 10 cards of your deck, and instead of having Revenge, it gets Destiny put on. For those of you who forget what Destiny does, Destiny means that when the card is drawn, it immediately is played onto the battlefield, and you draw an additional card. So Mokto's line of text saying Mokto's Revenge never ends essentially just says that Mokto, once he dies once, gets shuffled into the top 10 cards, and now he has Destiny, which will allow him to come out immediately. But when he dies, he just goes back again, which is something the other Revenge role players don't have. When they die, they stay dead. You can't recur Revenge. There's no way around it. But Mokto is just this constant source of pressure for these Argenport decks. It's a very, very strong card that has a huge payoff, but you're not quite sure when you're going to get it because of the randomness of Revenge. But it does give you this sense of inevitability because Mokto is always going to be coming back.
Right, unless Mokto gets silenced or transformed, he's coming back over and over. And the nice thing with him is, you know, on a lot of other Revenge cards, they're going to be undersized. You're really paying for that line of text that says Revenge. On Mokto, he's already a 5/5 flyer for 5, which is, you know, a vanilla 5/5 flyer for 5/5 flyer for 5. isn't exactly going to see constructed play, but those stats are already very nice up front, and you're just getting more on top of that. So he's going to show up in your mid-range lists, and even as a control finisher, he'll eventually get the job done as well. So I expect to see him in both those kinds of lists, and again, he's in a lot of deck lists. I've got the deck list doc up in front of me, and if you search Mako, you're going to see him in a lot of lists. Just an exciting and powerful card. So what other goodies do we got here? I guess up next will be Skycrag.
Yeah, we got Skycrag next, and there's two very important Skycrag cards. I want to touch the legendary first. Of course, we have the big role player in Champion of Fury, but first, let's touch on Vadius Clanfather here.
All right, so Vadius or Vadius, I don't pronunciation guide here, not sure, but Mr. Clanfather is it's Skycrag's not exactly big legendary, but certainly awesome legendary. 3-cost double fire primal influence requirement with a 3/2 quick draw Aegis, right? So when you stick him, he's going to stick unless your opponent's got a weapon to take him out. With quick draw and Aegis, you can't just torch him. He passes the torch test because he's got that Aegis to protect him. And with quick draw, he can be really hard to block, especially if he somehow received war cries or other buffs in the meantime. Or even if they do block with, say, Sandstorm Titan, you can just torch the Titan and Vadius survives while the Titan dies. And on top of all that, he has an ultimate where if you pay 7, you play a Steel Fang Chakram on Vadius. So that means he becomes a 7/2, and if you ever deal with it, that Steel Fang Chakram that's on him goes back to your hand. So you can put it on another unit, like, say, a 4/2 charging, overwhelming Yeti. So Vadius is really awesome in, aggressive Skycrag decks. It remains to be seen if he can really get played in, like, a more mid-range type of thing. He does stick, at least, but he's not the best blocker other than the fact, he's not going to die to spells when you play him. But the real reason this card's so amazing is that he's got a kind of a partner in crime coming along with him in Champion of Fury.
Yeah, and let's definitely touch on that one while we still have some time. Champion of Fury. Now, this is a huge, huge payoff card for the aggressive Skycrag aggro decks. I mean, this card puts in a ton of work. Let's go ahead and run down the stat line real quick. So this is a 2-cost 2/2 Skycrag influence, so fire primal, and it has a text box that says, when you have 2 fire influence, Champion of Fury gets +1 attack and charge, so that would make him a 3/2. Or if you have primal, you get 2 primal influence, you get +1 in overwhelm, which means that if you can get lucky enough to pull off 2 fire and 2 primal influence on turn 2, you have a 4/2 charging overwhelm on the second turn of the game. When I say that out loud, you can start to see why Skycrag is becoming the go-to aggro deck for aggro players in the new set.
Yeah, Skycrag can be extremely explosive. I've been on the receiving end of turn 1 Oni Ronin, turn 2 fully buffed Champion of Fury, and it feels about as bad as it sounds. Skycrag's got some nice toys to play with aggro-wise. It also got some good control and mid-range cards as well that we'll be seeing today. But I think this Champion of Fury plus Vadius combo is just so obviously powerful that it's kind of a no-brainer. We're going to see it plenty today. But as I mentioned before, aggro decks are just a little bit easier to figure out early on because it's like, all right, how am I killing my opponent? They're still very tough to refine, but when you're giving such a clear, immediate blueprint in Champion of Fury and Vadius, you just know you're going to see decks with playsets of both of them today, and they're going to do a lot of beatdowns with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is just such a powerful card. We're going to see a lot of quick games due to Skycrag aggro just being able to run you down. And if your deck can't keep up with those aggressive 2-drops, it's not going to end well for you. And, overwhelm and charge are 2 hard mechanics to deal with. I mean, you can put the blocker in the way, but if it doesn't have a ton of health, which, a lot of units don't, you're still going to be dealing some damage. And that's kind of Skycrag's game plan in set 2 right now, is that Skycrag aggro deck is all about pushing through every single point of damage they can get and just slowly watching that 25 tick away.
Yeah, or maybe quickly watching that 25 tick away, especially if you're doing 6 damage on turn 2.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
let's move on to this final faction pair. And again, we're going to be showing off the kind of flashy flagship legend for Xenon. Xenon, our lovely time and shadow combo, got a pretty sweet 3-drop in Ian the Abductor. How about you give us the rundown on Ian and what he's doing here?
Yeah, sure. This card was pretty unassuming at first. People weren't sure where they laid on it, but I think after playtesting, everybody definitely agrees that this card has a lot of powerful potential. It is a 3-cost 3/3 that requires 1 time influence and 2 shadows. So the requirement is a little bit steep, but you're definitely paying for the effects you get. So the 2 keywords it comes with are lifesteal and ambush. And ambush is a huge keyword. It's not a keyword that we very often see on cards, but it definitely messes with your opponent's head. It allows you to play some mind games and, fake an instant spell. And instead, here you go. Now I have a 3/3 blocker in play. So we can see some interesting things with the ambush. The ultimate as well is actually very powerful when you get to that part in the game. If you can get to 9 power, the ultimate says you pay 9 power to silence a unit in your void, and then you play it back on your board with +3/+3. This allows you to hit absolutely massive units. One of the synergies that sticks out right away is a card like Copper Conduit that's already going to be a very big body that you're not too worried about silencing. You do lose the overwhelm, but you're putting +3/+3 on it and putting another giant body back on the board.
Right. In Xenon, you're not going to have a shortage of large bodies, and especially once you give it +3/+3. Like even an Ion, getting back an old Ion is still a 6/6. So, like, even that is super relevant. And you're getting all of this from your 3-drop that you're happy to play on turn 3. So, yeah, we're going to see Ion in Xenon mid-range decks, even more aggressively tilted Xenon decks. It's still just a 3/3 for 3 with lifesteal. Like, that's just a good card plus ambush. Like, he's just never really a terrible card. Kind of like how Kothon was. Just good early and very acceptable late.
Yeah, definitely. She's a very solid role player. She's not going to necessarily be the all-star herself, very much like Kothon, but she gets a job done, and she allows Xenon to get itself to that more mid-range of the late game, which is something that it could have had problems with in the past. It wasn't always like that, but it's definitely, a nice unit to help bridge yourself to that late game, which is definitely more of where I feel like Xenon wants to be in this set.
Okay, so that all done. That's just a very, very small sample of the cards in Omens of the Past. We kind of picked out the obvious, super powerful cards that turns out neither of the decks we're about to showcase here in this round 1 matchup are playing. That's kind of what I guess we could expect today. Omens of the Past brought more than just those few cards we just showed off. Don't worry, both of these decks are featuring some cards from Omens of the Past. It's just I think it's a testament to this set that it's not just 5 or 6 cards that it's bringing to the table. It might be closer to 50 that are ultimately going to see constructed play, maybe even more than that. A lot of cool sweet role players, build arounds, bombs. You're looking for something fun to do. Omens of the Past is bringing to the table, and we've got some really something really interesting coming here in this matchup.
Yeah, we most certainly do. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So our 2 players for our round 1 feature match are going to be Zoochz, who is on Dredge of all decks, and Marius 294, who is going to be on, I believe it was JPF or FJP control. So this is kind of like an Ikaria blue list that he's playing, but it also has a lot of other threats in here. This isn't like the traditional Ikaria blue of old where you're stalling out until you can get to Ikaria. There are a couple different threats in here that can do the job.
Yeah, namely Molat and Nakova is showing up in Marius's list. We didn't talk about this card, but it's an 8-drop 8/8 Aegis Flyer with Spark. So if you hit your opponent, you when you play the card with Spark, you get the Spark effect. The Molat and Nakova's Spark effect does 4 damage to your opponent and their entire board. So it's pretty wild. With 4 Rise to the Challenge, you can kind of know when you want to get Molad and Nakova, or when you want to get Ikaria, or I guess when you want to get Starsteel Dice Show. And then on top of that, Marius still has Kothon early on. I guess I did lie. This deck does feature Kothon. And yeah, it's just a different take on, I guess, what we've referred to as Ikaria Blue in the past, where you're kind of armory, but you're really just a controlled toolbox deck with some powerful finishers, and now those finishers are a little different. It looks like this match is getting started. The players have been told they can go, so let's get into this, Bairdrus.
Yeah, let's get into it, and we'll kind of run you down on what Zooch's deck does as we go. So Zooch is playing Dredge, which for those of you who didn't play Magic the Gathering is generally a deck that involves interacting with your Void a lot. So Zooch's is going to be looking to recur and replay threats from his Void as often as possible. And we kind of see that he went for a Xenon strategy here, which makes sense. Of course, Shadow is going to have most of the recursion effects, and Time has some of the best cards to recur. You know, we already touched on Xenon Obelisk, and we do see some Ions in Zooch's sideboard. So we see the players just getting off to an early start here, and Zooch is already dropping off one of the new threats of the set. I believe it's Deadly Wasp or Blistering Wasp. That is Blistering
Wasp. So Blistering Wasp. Blistering Wasp isn't as much of a threat as it is an answer, in that it's a 1/3 flying deadly. It's a really clean answer to, say, opposing Aegis flyers like Silverwing Familiars. It can just 1-for-1 trade with them very cleanly. But the other big thing is that it's on a body that's recurable. This deck is called Dredge, not because it's Dredge like Magic, but probably because there's 2 copies of this card, Memory Dredger, in Zooch's hand, which is a 3/4 flyer for 4 that kind of has Infiltrate, except it never goes away. It's not a one and done thing. Whenever Memory Dredger hits your opponent, you get to take a 2-drop or less. I think it can get 2 cost or 1 cost units from your Void, probably even 0 cost, and put them back into play. So every time Memory Dredger hits an opponent, you're getting cheap units that have died back into play. And hey, Blistering Wasp, when it dies, probably traded with something because it's a deadly unit. So right there is some sweet synergy, and we're going to see what else this Memory Dredger can do in this deck.
Yeah, and we already see a Memory Dredger coming down right now. This is we're going to see it a lot sooner than it looks like we were thinking. And Marius, on the other hand, he used a Rise to the Challenge last turn and went and got a 5-cost Martial Ironthorn. So we have a 7/5 Martial Ironthorn. And in the meantime, Marius is dropping his Auric Runehammer to just play defensively and take care of the Memory Dredger, which is, you know, very understandable. Memory Dredger, a very, very scary card.
Yep, so Zooch opts to slam the Obelisk, turn his O2 into a 1/3 to finish off that hammer, and Marius responds in kind by dropping a 7/5, which Zooch can cleanly answer with his own Annihilate here. And I think he's very happy to do that, considering Marius doesn't really have a lot of Annihilate targets in the deck, so Zooch happy to get that out of hand and onto a live target. It'll be interesting to see if he opts to draw or hold up Scorpion Wasp, but he goes for the draw. Marius is pretty far away from influence for Ikaria, so I don't think you have to worry about holding up the Wasp just yet. And he finds a Slumbering Stone to cast that turn as well. So pretty nice turn from Zooch to reload that board.
Yeah, he's definitely reloading well. We saw Marius on the other side casting another new card, Trailblaze, which allows you to look at the top card of your deck and either place it on the top or the bottom. So for those of you familiar with Magic, this is Scry, essentially. And he goes ahead and puts a land on top of his deck, or a power, rather. And he's getting himself closer to these influence requirements, but he's not quite there. And we see him getting to cast it again. And this time he's putting Kothon on the top of his deck.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, when you put it on top, you do draw it immediately. Trailblaze both scries and then draws. So opts to draw the Kothon. Doesn't want to play it here to, I guess, guarantee that he gets the ultimate value out. Doesn't want it dying before he gets to get that 4/4 flyer. And he still gets a hold up Island's Choice either way. So, yep, here comes Kothon. He'll activate it, get the 4/4 flyer, but he's staring down a 5/6 Memory Dredger and opts to not get the flyer. Now, Zooch will notice this. His opponent chose to not use that 6-power ultimate. But if you're Zooch, do you just have to swing here anyways? Make him, I mean, are you going to, your opponent's on 9 power. They're probably going to be able to represent Island's Choice for the rest of this game. Island's Choice, if you're not familiar with it, as it is a new card, can either counter a spell that costs 4 or more, or kill an attacking unit with 4 or more attack. And while Memory Dredger normally has 3 attack, it's got 5 here because of this double obelisk. And it looks like Zoochz is going to respect the Island's Choice. And Marius now has to decide if he wants to ult or play Ikaria.
Yeah, and we do see Marius electing to use the ultimate effect here. Zoochz taking it slow here. Marius does have the influence to finally cast Ikaria, and now that we see a silence coming down, it looks like Ikaria is going to get dropped in a what would be considered a little bit of a safer position. Now, of course, we know that Zoochz has a Scorpion Wasp lurking in his hand. This is going to help take care of the Ikaria if Marius goes in with this turn, which you would assume he would. Ikaria is a very powerful card. Even if it does die right away, you at least did get the Warcry 5 out of it, and that might be good enough here.
Yeah, if you're Marius, you got to turn the table and get aggressive here. Zoochz has a double obelisk, means once he finds 1 more power, his board is going to get very large and hard to handle. So Marius, while normally the control deck trying to slow down the game, drag it out, he realizes that if he doesn't deal with this board by either killing his opponent or finding even finding a board clear doesn't do anything here because those Slumbering Stones become large flyers. So he knows he just needs to try and race and get this in, get the pressure going before these obelisks turn the entire board into an unmanageable mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoochz is only 1 power away from basically being able to become the aggressive deck that he hasn't been for quite a while. We see Marius using his 3rd copy of Trailblaze to look at a Rise to the Challenge, and he ends up using Rise to the Challenge to go fish up a Valkyrie Enforcer, it looks like.
Yep, so because that Valkyrie Enforcer received the Warcry from Ikaria, Marius knew he was going to draw it soon. He just wasn't sure how soon. And he'd rather just draw right now, take that Dredger out of the sky, and immediately get back to pressuring with these flyers. Plus, that 10-8 flyer was threatening lethal the next turn, which is a big deal. So he opts to draw it sooner rather than later. Again, trying to end this game, and Zoochz replies in kind by killing the large flyer and spacing back to try and win this race.
Yeah, and he has put Marius down to 8. So if this Blistering Wasp, can hold, he will be able to force Marius to go ahead and sit back this turn.
And Blister Sting Wasp, being a 3/5 deadly, dodges that Vanquish and dodges a lot of removal, if we're being honest here. So Marius will still opt to draw this Vanquish, it looks like, and just take out a 6/7. But it's a rough spot for him right now. It's close, though. He's got the air advantage, whereas Zoochz has maybe a little more stats on board here, especially with that 8th power showing up.
Yeah, with that 8th power showing up, it's not quite an A-space situation.
You A-space here because any 2 units that get through is lethal. So it means Marius has to double block. But again, Island's Choice shows up. But Marius still has to block at least 3 units here, so he's not going to be able to crack back for lead.
That's true. He will clean basically the whole board here, so...
Yeah, Marius still has to block 1 more unit.
Yeah, he'll have... Die. So he'll get to keep an Owl, but he's going to be facing down a very scary board. And this is exactly what Zoochz was waiting for. He was just waiting to rip that 8th power. That way he could have both the obelisks turned on and be getting those 4/4 bonuses. I mean, we're looking at 4/6 uncracked Slumbering Stones. Like, we haven't even seen the flyers come out of them. And by themselves, the Slumbering Stones are already completely insane threats. It's just 4/6s. This is just, once again, the power of Obelisk. A very powerful card from set 1. Still very powerful in set 2.
Marius trying to figure out if there's even blocks he can make that gives him outs here. Even a Mole out of Nakova is not going to wipe this board anymore. It's all out of 4 damage range. Something like Harsh Rule is just going to crack open those Slumbering Stones and make 6/6 flyers, as you mentioned. And he opts to double block the Wasp, which makes both of his units die because it's deadly. And the Torch is going to not do enough here. So Zoochz takes game 1 off the back of some obelisks, and I haven't taken a look at Marius' sideboard, but if he's got Caleb's Choice, you think it might be coming in here.
Yeah, certainly. And taking a look at his sideboard now, we do see he has 1 copy of Caleb's Choice. He's got 3 Permafrost on the sideboard. I have to imagine we're going to see those coming in. He's got 2 copies of Rock Slide, 2 copies of Vanquish, an Island's Choice, 2 Mortars, and a Duelist Blade to Leave a Witness. Leave a Witness might actually be a very solid card here. Like, he's definitely going to have time to ramp up to 7. And these are basically his copies of number 5 and 6 of Harsh Rule, which, you know, given Zooch's strategy is essentially to play these threats on the board that will allow him to recur and build this giant board, you're going to need ways to clean up the board.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Permafrost comes in here if he's going to bring in the Leave a Witness as well. Like, the whole point of Permafrost is to lock down early threats so they can't recur, and then they get to recur later anyways. I'm not sure if that's worth it, especially an opponent that's repping some Devours and Direwood Prowler, which is another card that you can use to sacrifice your units and draw cards. But Marius does already have the 1 Caleb's Choice main, 1 more in the side. For those not familiar with Caleb's Choice, this is another one of the choice cycles. It's a modal spell. It's got 2 options. It costs 2 power for fire and primal influence, and it can either kill a monofaction attachment. So in this case, Obelisk is the big hit, but it can also counter a monofaction spell such as Death Strike or Dark Return. So it's got some interesting targets here. Is that enough to bring it in? I think so. I think so. We saw the power of Obelisk there, and the fact that it can still also protect your own threats from certain spells means it's not, even in the games where they don't draw an Obelisk, it's still going to have some use. It looks like sideboarding's over, though, and we're getting back into this match.
Yeah, and just really quick from Zooch's sideboard, we see 2 copies of Suffocate, 3 Ions, 2 Decays, 2 Vara's Choice, a Banish, 3 Stewards of the Past, and 2 Azindal's Gift. So possibly seeing cards like Azindal's Gift if he wants to play the card advantage game. And, you know, maybe some more threats like Steward of the Past that make it very hard for Marius to put blockers in front of.
Yeah, important to note, Azindal's Gift also gets destroyed by Caleb's Choice. That is a big deal. But again, if they're using up their Caleb's Choice to deal with your Obelisk, they might not have it anymore for Gift, and that'll be a interesting dance we see come up if it does in this match. That'll be there's a lot going on now with these extra modal spells. So Zoochz just kind of curving out here, not with the most impressive pressure, but units nonetheless. And he's debating on if he wants to commit this Dredger to the board or a Slumbering Stone that isn't really doing anything either. But yeah, he throws it out there. Marius, with a handful of depleted power, is just going to keep filling it up with wisdom, it looks like. And he's got to be happy that he's not under too much pressure just yet.
Yeah, and this isn't going to force Marius to pull the trigger on Harsh Rule like the Memory Dredger will. Now that we see the Memory Dredger coming down, this is definitely going to force him to pull the trigger at some point here. Unfortunately for Marius, because he is playing this 3-faction deck, a lot of his power does come in depleted, so not able to hit Harsh Rule this turn, but he does have the Auric Rune Hammer to go ahead and take care of the Memory Dredger, so not a huge loss here.
Well, now I don't even know if Marius wants to Harsh Rule, because all it's actually going to do is make Zooch's board more threatening by making these O2s into 2/2 flyers. He might just opt to get like a Throne Warden down here instead, or just pass and hold up Wisdom. Again, he's only being threatened by 1 damage a turn right now. Zoochz just Dark Returned a Memory Dredger to hand, didn't actually put any more threats on the board. And Marius is kind of fine with just building up resources in hand here, hitting those high influence costs, and maybe clearing this board with something like Molot and Nikova at some point. Although that's going to be a little hard to trigger here with this much stuff in the way.
Yeah, definitely. Although he did just pick up the torch, so if he can make it to 9, I guess that is a potential trigger right there. Yeah, definitely an interesting strategy for a torch that I don't think we've seen before.
Yeah, now the Harsh Rule comes down now that the Memory Dredger's in play. This is worth cleaning up. Zoochz has a Gift and a Vera in hand, which are nice against control, but not when you're stuck on 4. So Zoochz opted to put a little more late game into this deck. It's just he's drawing it a bit sooner than he'd like. And now Marius is in real nice shape. He's just going to slam an 8/8 flying Aegis here. And Zoochz, I mean, has Scorpion Wasp for it. The torch out of Marius is gone, but oh my god, he's opting to not play the Ikaria pre-combat. I guess he was hoping to hit with the 8/8 and then play another one, or maybe just Daisho clean up the board now that Zoochz is tapped out. Nope, opts to drop just more big dumb flyers instead.
Yeah,
I can respect that.
Yeah, big dumb flyers looks like it's going to get the job done for the time being. Now that he's going to drop Ikaria, we're going to see a ton of pressure in the air from Marius. And really, this game came down to, unfortunately, Zoochz just missed 2 or 3 power drops there in the mid game. If he had scaled up to 7 and been able to drop this as Zindel's gift, this game would be completely different. But under the current,
it wouldn't be that different with the Caleb's choice in Marius's hand. But
that is true. That is true.
like I said, that gives you some safety from a Zindel and his treacherous gifts. But yeah, Zoochz not getting the pressure he wanted early, and then not finding the recursion that he wanted late. It wasn't there. It just wasn't there. Those slumbering stones essentially did nothing until they died. And it'll be interesting to see if Zoochz tries to change his approach. See some decays coming in for Zoochz. I don't know if you want to try and out control the control deck here. I realize they've got some weapons that you can deal with, but you might be diluting his threat base too much. I think that's kind of what we saw in that last.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I think one of the important cards that we just kind of didn't get to see that game right there is the obelisk. Like, he needs that obelisk in play. That board of 0-2s and 1-3s is so much less impressive when you don't have an obelisk down to even just give 1 power to each of the units. You know, chipping away for 4 damage a turn instead of 1 is a considerable increase in your clock.
Oh yeah. Xenon Obelisk, no surprise to anyone, is still a very good card, even with new cards out and new answers to it. It's still very much worth playing. So here we are, Game 3. Marius with no Justice influence, but a castable Wisdom of the Elder and a Torch is a fine place to be. We'll see if he opts to torch this Wasp. He passes for now, waits to see what else comes out of Zoochz.
Oh, and we see a very cool tech card in Zooch's hand. We see a Varus Choice. Varus Choice is a 3-cost Xenon faction requirement, so Time Shadow. And it says silence an enemy unit and put it into its owner's hand, or silence a unit in the enemy player's hand they discarded. And,
right.
You know, obviously Marius is playing these very high-cost, very impactful cards.
That's going to whiff here, though. But yeah, the ideal scenario for Varus Choice here is you take an Ikaria or a Malat and Nakova out of their hand. But they don't have any targets like that right now. Marius just has all spells and weapons, so he whiffs on that Varus Choice. You threw it out there, hope, you know, because it is going to be tough to fit into curve later on. But the earlier you play, the less likely it is to have a target, and it kind of bit him here. And wow, he's going to whiff a second time, and that means throwing away 2 cards against control is not where you want to be.
Yeah, definitely not where you want to be. And, you know, it makes sense for Zoochz, unfortunately, that he's doing this. You know, he does keep whiffing, but he doesn't really have anything else to do at this point. He's missed power drops 2 turns in a row. He can't scale up to his Memory Dredger, and he's nowhere near Vara. He picks up a Devour, which would let him draw cards, but the Blistersting Wasp got handled earlier. And Marius has found Starsteel Daisho now. He's going to be pressuring in.
Ooh. Yeah, and with that Aegis from Island's favor, this Decay can't hit the Daisho. And that's not good for Zoochz. He can play a Scorpion Wasp and maybe hit it once here, but he can't even get the Obelisk down to pump up a little more damage. I imagine he's just going to be devouring this Wasp before it dies. But in the meantime, Marius is just keeping up the pressure, drawing more cards here. Has Caleb's Choice, too, for this Obelisk when it does show up. Ooh, gets a Rise to the Challenge off that Scrying the power to the bottom. And, yeah, he's just got gas for days here. Zoochz is going to need a lot from this Devour to catch up here.
Yeah, he's going to need a ton of powerful cards here to catch him up. And, you know, just power in general. I mean, that's really what he's lacking here. And he does find some power, but in the meantime, the Starsteel Daisho is still down. He'll be able to catch it with the memory dredger now, but that's assuming that Marius doesn't just go in here with this Akari. And wow, actually, he's even going to offer the block so that he can keep the weapon. Zoochz is obviously going to decline that, so he's going to make the die show get burned there. But Zoochz still has to find an answer to this Akari, and I don't think he's going to have one.
No, the Wasp is already dead. That was his cleanest answer to it, and Zoochz is not dead on board, but Marius will show off the torch at some point here, and that'll get the job done. So I don't think Zoochz can. His power's tapped out. I was gonna say you could like decay his own obelisk to stay alive or something like that. I'm not sure if you can use decay on your own attachments, but it didn't matter. He was dead there, and Marius with big bad Aegis flyers gets the job done there against Zooch's Xenon Dredger.
Yeah, definitely new decks, new cards. Very cool. That's essentially what I imagine the newer takes of Ikaria Blue are going to start to look like. Is they're going to start to be called less Ikaria Blue and more just FJP control. Because obviously we saw a lot of different threats playing a role there. Even the mullet Nakova is there, just very powerful. Even being slammed without the spark effect. 8/8 flying dragon. With an Aegis, pretty powerful. It turns out.
Yeah, especially when your opponent's still only on 3 or 4 power. There's not a lot that's going to answer it there. It looks like we've got a backup match coming. It'll be Calimdir on Time Primal Shadow Control versus Wegandi on Fire Time Primal Midrange. So we're getting that coverage up and going. We're moving into that. But man, that last game, Zoochz getting up one game and then losing in the sideboarded matches, didn't quite get the obelisk pressure that he wanted like he had in game 1. And, he's still got plenty of tournament left. This is a 7-round tournament because of all the players. And, we'll see how he does in the future because that deck is pretty sweet.
Yeah, he's definitely got plenty of time to come back. So we'll see how that goes. However, we do have our backup match now pulled up for you. We've got Calimdir versus Wegandi. And Calimdir is on TPS control. And Wegandi is going to be on FTP mid-range. So I actually have taken a look at Calimdir's TPS control list, and this is very similar to Film Control. Just splashing in a few cards for time. The most notable one is going to be Ion. Calimdir was talking to me about this yesterday.
Yeah, that might be the most notable one, but I think you could contest that. But it is a sweet addition. What was he telling you about?
Basically, he was just telling me that this was a deck that he felt very strongly about in the format. He felt that Film Control with this Time Splash was the deck he wanted to be on to try and handle Dark Combri, Chalice, and Skycrag. Those were the decks that he was viewing as kind of the scariest in the format currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came up with this kind of going back to Film Control. And obviously, Rhino, you're the resident Film Control player here. How do you feel about Film Control and the different variants in the current set?
Yeah, adding time to Film Control. The Ion is nice just as another 3-drop life gain tool that's good in the late game. But you also gain Scorpion Wasp and Banish are the other big ones. Scorpion Wasp helps you deal with Aegis units, which are notoriously difficult for your non-Varus favor draws. And Banish lets you answer some troublesome early weapons. Also, some sideboard cards like Mystic Ascendant, Varus Choice Decay, again, just helping with Film's problems. But in this game itself, we've just kind of got Steward of the Past beat down versus Steward of the Prophecy beat down. It looks like Calendir's got some 3/5 deadlies backed up by removal, and I don't think we've got a shot of Wegandi's hand, but seeing that he's stuck on 4, I'm guessing it's a lot of mid-range goodies. Wegandi's playing 4 Heart of the Vault, some Shatterglass Mages, Mystic Ascendant up there in the 5 to 6 range, plus Surso, Sandstorm Titan. It's just a pile of beef with some Lightning Storm, Caleb's Choice, that sort of thing as backup removal. Some Permafrost as well. So control versus mid-range, where you can maybe argue it's just two big mid-ranges going up against each other. But Calimdir's got the board really up to Wegandi to see if he can swing back control of it here.
Yeah, Calimdir is in just full beatdown mode, and I'm not sure what Wegandi could come up with. You know, Sandstorm Titan is very good, but obviously we're going to see this Death Strike away, and Calimdir is still holding a Permafrost, so he can answer at least one more non-endurance threat here. And in the meantime, he's just providing this very solid beatdown. These two Steward of the Past are really going kind of all the way right here, and sometimes it's just good enough that they're 3 costs. But we see double Polymorph coming out from Wegandi, and all of a sudden Calimdir has no board here. He's going to drop a Permafrost to attack in with the 2 frogs just to keep the pressure up to see if he can close the game out.
Does Wegandi have like a Lightning Storm maybe, or a Rock Slide? Did he keep those in this matchup? I doubt it. All right, there's at least a Heart of the Vault to kill one of these frogs, draws him a card, gets the Death Strike out of hand. Calimdir's going to at least take Wegandi to 3 here, unless Wegandi got like a reduced cost torch that he wants to use. And Calimdir finds another Death Strike. Can this frog go the distance? It's going to be difficult, but certainly possible. If he gets Wegandi to 1, then also his Varus favors are now lethal and various things like that. Oh, but the backlash. Wow.
0 cost backlash.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's
that is
absolutely brutal. Oh.
Wow. So that is Calimdir can still close this out with a couple ping effects, but Wegandi is okay. Varus favor takes him to 1.
Oh, Varus favor takes the 1. Okay. So he needs one more Varus favor. Hold on. This is stalled on Wegandi, though. This means he either has another Caleb's Choice.
Yeah.
So he's got a second Caleb's Choice to go ahead and negate that.
Yeah, he doesn't want to get into Black Sky Harbinger range because you can't counter Black Sky Harbinger. So he decided, I've got all these spells. I don't want to die. There's the second Varus favor that could have been lethal, but obviously isn't. And Wegandi takes this from Calimdir. 0 cost backlash. As I said, that Heart of the Vault, that cost reduction's not nothing. And my God, what a hit off Heart of the Vault there. Absolutely incredible. Killing a unit, getting a 6/6 on the board, and getting a free backlash is absolutely crushing.
Yeah, and we see just how powerful Heart of the Vault is. You know, we were talking about it in the pre-show about how much work that card does, but we just saw it right there. You know, as 6/6, he took care of one of the frogs, which, you know, was putting up a huge clock. And then the card he draws is Backlash. Of all cards he draws, Backlash reduces the cost by 2 and just sneaks it in for 0 against Calimdir there. Calimdir going for the kill, being able to push himself in, and you just see it get countered by a 0 cost backlash. Like,
yeah, the frog beatdowns cut just short by the backlash. Wow. We knew there would be some exciting games on these new cards, and I think it delivered that first round. Man, that's a tough way to go for Calimdir, but hey, at least he'll be on a highlight reel, just maybe on the wrong end of it.
Yeah, for real. Ooh, that was pretty exciting there. It's very cool to see Heart of the Vault. Yeah, it's really cool to see Heart of the Vault get dropped like that and just see exactly how powerful that card could be. I mean, that cost reduction was fantastic there. So, you know, yeah, big props to Wegandi there for being able to pull it off in the end. So we see Wegandi taking down a series. We see Marius taking down a series. And we see a lot of new cards coming out. And, you know, a lot of these set 2 cards are looking very impressive, I have to say, Rhino. We're seeing a lot of very, very cool things.
I mean, yeah, we saw Caleb's Choice play a big role in both of these last 2 matches, just taking out attachments and countering spells. And we're going to see that from a lot of other cards, too. Again, it's not going to be all Omens of the Past. We're seeing plenty of Sandstorm Titans and other things around, of course. We saw that last game, Polymorph. Hey, there we go. You know, round set 1, not exactly all-star, but finding a place there in Wegandi's list. And we'll see more action in the future rounds. I think that's it for coverage here. But we'll be back soon enough for round 2 of this 7-round 100-person extravaganza here, week 3 of the Eternal Tournament Series.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Stay tuned, guys. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back with coverage of round 2 in just a few.